But either way, let's just jump into this episode. Starting at number 10, we have the China's People's Liberation Army. China's army has to go through a 17-step obstacle course that includes swimming, climbing, and leaping over or through objects that are set on fire. Now, even if you do it perfectly or you're in good physical condition, you know, the training is pretty intense. Like, it's gonna destroy you. Like, not exactly though, but like you're gonna feel it. So candidates, they're required to also hold their breath underwater for 1 minute. And if they even try to come up for a second to get a little bit of air, boom, nope, they're dunked right back down. You gotta stay there for a minute. Don't try to extend that minute. Moving on to number 9, we have India's National Security Guard Commandos, or the NSG. Organizations within India's armed forces, they test potential soldiers by giving them only a day's worth of food and water, and then they're left in a remote place like a jungle to survive and find their way back. Now, that's just an entry-level test for India's NSG. Some are so determined to join the NSG that they actually finish with food and water left over just to impress the people that are testing them. One training method also requires candidates to get beats from local people as an endurance test. And there's another test that they have to pass where they need to pass target practice while drunk. And this is to simulate firing your weapon under unusual conditions. Now we know the Russia's Spetsnaz, they had to be in this episode. So the training and the selection process for the Spetsnaz is a long 5-year process. Now the first 5 months alone are designed to break recruits and then build them back up so they're willing to perform tactics that their superiors want them to perform. But the good thing though for Spetsnaz is that their operatives get to select their own non-commissioned officers from within their ranks, instead of letting their superiors make that choice for them during the review process. But their training tactics are kept really hush-hush. We don't know too much about them, but we just know it's really intense. Number 7, we have Australia's Special Air Service Regiment. Now there's one aspect of their training called resistance to interrogation. Now one actual operative described the experience of the training and said that a white bag was put on his head and then he was stripped and taken to a cell, and then he was put in stress positions for hours and deprived of sleep. So if he even started to doze off or even looked like he was even thinking about dozing off slightly, he was slapped back to remain awake for 3 days straight. Now the Special Air Service Regiment has not disclosed all of their training methods, but apparently more people have lost their lives training to join them than actual recruits that were sent on real operations. US Navy SEALs is up next at number 6. So perhaps the most popular group in this episode. We see the Navy SEALs everywhere, in media, in the video games, all of that. But while their 30-month average training program is only about half of what the Spetsnaz is, it condenses a lot of intensity into 1 week during the first 3 weeks called Hell Week.
After that, the plebes head to their dorm at Bancroft Hall.
What's your company?
And assemble on an area known as Red Beach, tasked with teaching proper protocol to the plebes.
Now study and know the entire chain of command. Do you understand me?
These are the ones that we're going to serve with in the future, and they want them to be the best that they can possibly be.
Now on 4 hours of sleep, candidates, they have to spend 5.5 days constantly covered in mud and in the cold, performing training exercises on coastal environments, as well as paddling and doing extreme exercises and fighting just to stay awake, among other things. Now the crazy part is that their trainers yell at them to quit, and they taunt them by eating and drinking food in front of them. However, although the training is intense, there is emergency medical staff that's available all the time, just in case. At number 5, we have the Israeli Shayatet. Now over the course of 20 months, they must go through training and diving under extreme cold conditions with no visibility, power drop operations, demolitions, and more. And now those who qualify are then assigned to air, sea, and land operations based on which one they did the best in. Now trainees are also sent out on real missions in pretty much the worst possible circumstances. The Shayatet also has medical personnel on hand at all times because the training is so intense, anything could happen. Moving on to number 4, we have the South Korean Special Warfare Command. Now, this training course goes on for 10 days, and while they're there, they experience training in low temperatures because they train outside. They don't even wear shirts for their training. They have to run and do sit-ups and even wrestle each other in freezing snow. That's probably the worst thing I've ever heard of for a training exercise in this whole episode, or just in general. Now here's the thing though, everyone also needs to have a black belt in Taekwondo, but you know, that's the easy part. These guys should have been number 1. They're training outside in the snow without shirts. The training at number 3 is UK Special Air Service. Candidates for the SAS, they're dumped in the middle of nowhere and told to cover 40 miles in 20 hours while carrying a 60-pound weight and rifle.
Hold it. Keep it there.
Go. Everything you've got, 20G. Come on, everything you've got.
Boys, there's no way of getting through.
Also, they have no food except just a bottle of water with them. Now, their uniforms and their boots are chosen to not fit them. Like, this is done purposely. Now, for those who actually complete it in the time that's required, they then have to perform a 4-mile run only in half an hour. Now, here we have the Pakistani Special Services Group, or the SSG, coming in at number 2. Now, these guys, of course, are very, very, very intense and hardcore. Pakistan puts their trainees through an endurance run on a stricter timeline than the UK does. Now, after 2 years of service in the regular Pakistani military, a service member is then eligible for SSG selection. During an 8-month training period, soldiers are required to cover 36 miles of territory in only 12 hours, and then they have to run 5 miles in 45 minutes with a full pack. Now, at the end of the 8 months, SSG candidates have to perform 7 paradrops, and 5 of them are done during the day and 2 of them are done at night. Now then, after that, they proceed to the advanced commando training. And that's where they have to spend half of a year doing commando training. And when that's complete, they get to join the SSG. But guys, we've seen some intense training, but number 1 definitely is the United Kingdom's Gurkhas. Because of their living conditions already, like the Nepalese people who apply for this British military group, they're subjected to punishing tests. And this is even before they can even think of applying. But either way, the initial tests are pretty basic. They have some running and pull-up exercises, and then comes the real testing. So recruits are required to run 5 kilometers while wearing a 25-kilogram weight, and those 5 kilometers, they come with a 400-meter rise in incline and done through a very rocky and dusty terrain, which has to be done in only 45 minutes. This is so unfair. Like, we've done videos about the Nepalese Gurkhas before, so we know that they're a very hardcore group. But what the UK puts them through, it's pretty much impossible. You pretty much failed before you even started. Nevertheless, the Nepalese are so determined that some of them definitely make it through. How? I do not know. At number 10, we got the country of Morocco. So Morocco has the 5th largest armed forces in the entire region. It sits at 175,000 personnel, but it really faces a lot of challenges by one of the lowest defense budgets in the entire Middle East. The country does have a military that's heavily engaged with the disputed Western Sahara territory, as well as it's patrolling its borders. Their motto is God, Homeland, King. They have 1,109 combat tanks, 2,720 armored fighting vehicles, 530 self-propelled artillery, 198 towed artillery, and their rocket projectors sit at a total of 72. Moving on to number 9, we have Syria. The Syrian army makes up approximately 80% of the combined services. It officially came into being in 1945 before Syria obtained full independence the following year. The Syrian army, as well as the rest of its armed forces, has been heavily involved in suppressing political movements within Syria. Their motto is Guardians of the Homeland. When it comes to the total combat tanks, they have 5,035. Their armored fighting vehicles count sits at 5,170. They got 500 self-propelled artillery. Their towed artillery sit at 2,210, and they have 700 rocket projectors in their possession. Malaysia is at number 8. The King of Malaysia is the supreme commander of the Malaysian Armed Forces. Now, the Malaysian Army currently has 17 corps and regiments. These are grouped into three main components. There's a combat element, the combat support element, and the support elements. The corps and regiments are currently organized into 5 divisions. The first military units in Malaysia can be traced back to March of 1861. Now, the modern Malaysian Army came about in January of 1933. Their motto is strong and loyal. Now, they have 74 combat tanks in their possession. They have a total of 1,460 armored fighting vehicles, 29 self-propelled artillery, 211 towed artillery, and 54 rocket projectors. Moving on now to number 7, we got the country of Algeria. Their army includes 2 armored and 3 mechanized divisions. And the Land Forces Command is charged with organizing and preparing the land forces so as to ensure the defense of the national land space in cooperation with other forces. Their land forces is comprised of a central command, military and operational sectors, big units and autonomous units, as well as training institutions. The motto of the Algerian nation is by the people and for the people. They have 2,475 combat tanks, 6,900 armored fighting vehicles in total. Their self-propelled artillery are totaled at 400, and they have 583 towed artillery. They also have 367 rocket projectors. Now, number 6, Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian army is the largest branch of the Saudi armed forces. Now, I didn't find a motto specifically for the Saudi Arabian army, but the motto for the country is there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of God. And they have been active since 1744 as an independent service arm, but they have been an official branch of the armed forces since 1902. Now, back in the year 2000, Saudi Arabia's government spent billions of dollars to expand the Saudis' forces, including the Saudi army. Unfortunately, a lot of the modern equipment is still not fully used to its full potential. In any case, they have 1,062 combat tanks, they have 11,100 armored fighting vehicles, a whole lot of them. Self-propelled artillery total at 705, towed artillery sits at 1,818, and they have 122 rocket projectors. Halfway in at number 5, we have Indonesia. So the Indonesian army is composed of a headquarters, 15 military region commands, a strategic reserve command, a special forces command, as well as various other units. Now, there are today 5 types of infantry battalions in the Indonesian army, which are the Power Raider Infantry Battalion, Mechanized Raider Infantry Battalion, then they have the Raider Infantry Battalion, and then the Mechanized Infantry Battalion, and then finally the Infantry Battalion. A whole lot of infantry and battalions. Now, their motto is unmatchable bird with noble goals. They have 315 combat tanks in their possession, and they also have 1,300 armored fighting vehicles, 141 self-propelled artillery, 356 towed artillery, and 36 rocket projectors. Number 4 is the country of Pakistan. The Pakistan Army is a voluntary force, and the primary objective and its constitutional mission is to ensure the national security as well as the national unity of Pakistan. It conducts humanitarian rescue operations at home as well as participates in peacekeeping missions mandated by the United Nations. The 2 main branches of the army are the combat arms and the administrative services. Also consists of several branches that include the army officers, the junior commissioned or warrant officers, and other enlisted personnel. Their motto is a follower of none but Allah, the fear of Allah, strive for Allah. Pakistan's army has 2,200 combat tanks, 3,665 armored fighting vehicles, 429 self-propelled artillery, 1,226 towed artillery, and a total of 150 rocket projectors. Now, the nation coming in at number 3 is Iran. The Iranian army, or the Artesh, has its own joint staff which coordinates its 4 separate service branches, which are the ground forces, the air force, the Navy, and the newly established Air Defense Force. And the Iranian army fought 2 major invasions in the modern era. And the first time in 1941, it was the invasion by the Soviet and the British forces during World War II. And the second time was in 1980, and that was the Iraqi invasion, which lasted almost 8 years. Their motto is, "And our soldiers, they verily would be the victors." They have 1,632 combat tanks, 2,345 armored fighting vehicles, 570 self-propelled artillery, 2,128 towed artillery, and 1,900 rocket projectors. Now the nation coming in at number 2, Egypt. The Egyptian army is the largest service branch within the Egyptian Armed Forces. The Egyptian Armed Forces Chief of Staff's office is in Cairo, and he is the Chief of Staff of the Army. It has 3 command and control headquarters as well as 9 command and control field headquarters, and they're directed from the Chief of Staff's office. Its most significant engagements happened in the 20th century, and these were the 5 wars that Egypt had with Israel, and they were in 1948, 1956, 1967, 1967 to 1970, as well as in 1973. Their motto is, "We painted the face of our nation on our hearts." They have in their possession 2,160 combat tanks, 5,735 armored fighting vehicles, 1,000 self-propelled artillery, 2,189 towed artillery, and 1,100 rocket projectors. And finally, the number 1 most powerful Muslim country when it comes to their army is Turkey. When it comes to Turkey's army, sources trace the army's foundation to Modu Chanyu of the Xiongnu Empire in 209 BC. But the modern history of the army began with its formation after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. As of late 2015, there's reports that suggested that Turkish army, along with the rest of their armed forces, have seen their personnel strength increase to similar levels of the 2000s. Now the factors contributing to this are further stabilization of Syria and Iraq. Now their motto is peace at home, peace in the world. They have 3,200 combat tanks, 9,500 armored fighting vehicles, 1,120 self-propelled artillery. Their total artillery counts sit at 1,272, and they have 350 rocket projectors. Alright, so starting off with the first nation at number 10, we have Saudi Arabia with the Saudi Arabian Army. Saudi Arabia surpasses Egypt for the 10th spot of the largest armies in the world. There's a huge amount of money that's being spent on the Saudi Arabian army every single year, and it means that the country has one of the best equipped armed forces. They have a total active personnel of 478,000. Now the Royal Saudi Land Forces are composed of 3 armored brigades, 5 mechanized brigades, 1 airborne brigade, 1 Royal Guard brigade, and 8 artillery battalions. The army also has 1 aviation command with 2 aviation brigades. Moving on to number 9, we have Vietnam with the People's Army of Vietnam. Vietnam ranks number 9 in this episode with a total active personnel count of 482,000 people. Now in the backdrop of the resurgent China, the Social Republic of Vietnam has been strengthening its armed forces. Now the organizations and establishments of the People's Army of Vietnam started way back in 1944, all to remove the French colonial forces as well as the Japanese occupiers under the guidance of Ho Chi Minh. Their army is made up of course, their ground force, their navy, their air force, the border defense force, as well as coast guards. However, Vietnam does not have a separate ground force or army branch. It's kind of like all put together in one. Number 8 brings us Iran with their Islamic Republic of Iran army. Iran comes in at number 8 in this episode, and they have a total active personnel of 523,000. When it comes to the modern history of Iran, the Iranian army was founded about 100 years ago, and the current form, the Islamic Republic, is a little less younger than that. Now their headquarters are located in Tehran, Iran, and the mission is to protect territorial integrity of the Iranian state from external and internal threats. Now the Iranian army, or the Artesh as they're called in Persian, has its own joint staff which coordinates its 4 separate service branches, and those are the ground forces, air force, the navy, and there's also the air defense forces. South Korea comes in at number 7, and their army is the Republic of Korea Army. They have a total active personnel count of 625,000. Now the Republic of Korea Armed Forces was founded on August 15th, 1948, and their headquarters are in Seoul, South Korea. They were formally organized into 3 armies, the 1st Army, the 3rd Army, and the 2nd Operational Command. Now each of them had their own headquarters, their own corps, and their own divisions. After restructuring though, the 2nd Army was converted as the 2nd Operations Command, and that was in the year 2007, and the 1st and the 3rd Armies were merged as the Ground Operations Command, and that happened very recently in 2019. The Pakistan Army is at number 6, and they have a total personnel count of 654,000. Their army came into existence on August 14th, 1947, and it has its headquarters in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. The army's primary objective is of national security and national unity. And the Pakistani army is a voluntary force, and the army during disasters and emergency conducts humanitarian rescue operations at home, as well as participates in peacekeeping missions in different parts of the world. Pakistan also has the most amount of women in an army among the Islamic countries. Alright, so moving on to number 5, we have the ground forces of the Russian Federation. Russia has a total active personnel count of 1,013,628, and of course it's 5th on this list. The army was founded in the year 1992, and its major structural reorganization began in the year 2009. The Russian Ministry of Defense has its own headquarters at Moscow, and the main command of the ground forces consists of the main staff of the ground troops and the department force for peacekeeping forces. There's also the armaments of the ground troops and the rare services of the ground troops. There's the cadres of the ground forces troops, indoctrination work, as well as military education. And the branches of service include motorized rifles, tanks, artillery and rocket forces, troop air defense, special corps, reconnaissance signals, radio electronic warfare, engineering, nuclear, biological and chemical protection, logistical support, automobile, as well as the protection of their rear. There's also military units and logistics establishments. A whole lot going on in Russia's army. The nation coming at number 4 is North Korea. Their army is called the Korean People's Army Ground Forces. Now, North Korea has a total active personnel of 1,280,000. Their army is believed to have been founded back in the year 1932, and their headquarters are located at Pyongyang in North Korea. Their army consists of 5 branches. There's the ground force, the navy, the air force, and the strategic rocket forces, as well as the special operations. All right, guys, 3 nations left, and coming in at the number 3 spot, we have the United States with the United States Army. So the United States is very well equipped, and it has a total active personnel count of 1,281,900 people. The Army was founded over 200 years ago, and the US Army is the 3rd largest in the entire world. Now, the mission of the Army includes preserving the peace and security, as well as providing for the defense of the United States and the Commonwealths, as well as the possessions and areas occupied by the United States. Now, its headquarters are at Arlington County in Virginia in the United States, and it's the largest military branch of the United States Armed Forces. The Army is part of the Department of the Army, which is one of 3 military departments of the Department of Defense. But moving on to the nation at number 2 with the second largest army in the world, the Indian Army. They have a total active personnel count of 1,362,500. Their army headquarters are located in New Delhi, India, and initially the army's objective was to defend the nation's frontiers. Now, over the years now, the responsibility of protecting the country internally began to develop more and more. It has an all-volunteer force, and it comprises of more than 80% of the country's active defense personnel. The Army is still looking to expand, as they have embarked on an infantry modernization program known as Futuristic Infantry Soldier as a System, and it's also requiring new assets for its armored artillery as well as aviation branches. But India is not large enough to take the number 1 spot, because that goes to China and their People's Liberation Army Ground Forces. So China's troops total at 2,183,000. Their mission, of course, is to ensure that China is secured and stays safe. With the continuous advancements in the types of army equipment, as well as having the 2nd largest defense budget in the entire world, China ain't playing around. The army is the largest as well as the oldest branch of the Republic of China's armed forces, and there are 13 corps-sized army groups of China since the end of April 2017. Now, they're divided among 5 theater commands: the Eastern, Southern, Northern, Western, and Central commands. Within the theater command, starting in 2011, the divisions are being downsized into full brigades, armored, mechanized infantry, field artillery, air defense artillery, engineering, as well as logistical brigades. The first intelligence agency I'm going to feature is Mossad. Mossad is based in Israel and it was formed in December 13th, 1949. Its headquarters is Tel Aviv, Israel, and it has an estimated amount of 1,200 employees. Mossad is considered one of the best and most advanced intelligence agencies in the world. This Israeli intelligence agency, along with its counterpart, Amman for military intelligence and Shin Bet for international security, forms one of the most powerful intelligence communities in the whole world. Mossad's focus is on Arab organizations and countries. In fact, Mossad's operations are so secretive that it's one of the most difficult agencies in the world to locate. Okay, now next up we have the FSB in Russia. This agency was formed on April 12, 1995, and its headquarters is in Moscow, Russia. It's estimated that there's 300,000 employees in this agency. So you can call the FSB, or the Federal Security Bureau of the Russian Federation, the main successor of the controversial USSR State Security Committee, the KGB. The FSB mainly focuses on internal problems, as well as the economic and social aspects of political stability in the country. This is all in addition to counterintelligence, internal and border security, as well as counterterrorism. Now, due to its performance in recent years, it's considered one of the most popular agencies in the world. Okay, so you guys knew that this one had to be in this episode, and that's MI6 in the UK. The MI6 was formed in 1909 and its headquarters is the SIS building in London, UK. It's estimated that there are about 3,200 employees in this agency. So yes, the MI6 is one of the most elite intelligence agencies across the globe. MI6 stands for Military Intelligence Section 6, and the organization was formed to initiate and control secret intelligence operations on behalf of the British government. MI6 is one of the oldest intelligence agencies in the world, having been formed over 100 years ago, and since its formation, MI6 has been involved in the World War I as well as World War II, the Cold War, and several wars in the 21st century. An interesting fact, the MI6 building has also been featured in 2 James Bond movies. Next up, we have the ISI in Pakistan. And now we actually did a video dedicated to the ISI, so you might want to check it out. It's probably going to be in one of these cards in this episode, or if not, probably, I don't know, I'll link to it in this video description. Now, this agency was formed in 1948 and its headquarters is in Islamabad, Pakistan. ISI stands for Inter-Services Intelligence, and it's the premier intelligence agency in Pakistan, responsible for gathering, processing, and analyzing national security information from around the world. The ISI is very well organized, initially created for valuable information sharing between the 3 branches of the Pakistani military force. The role of the ISI evolved a lot over time, and it's become a full-time intelligence collecting agency on a global scale. With thousands of employees, the ISI is made up of a mix of army officers, some retired, as well as civilians. And the final most powerful intelligence agency in the world that I'm going to be featuring is the CIA of the United States. CIA was formed on September 18th, 1947, and its headquarters is in Langley, Fairfax County in Virginia, United States. It's estimated that there's 21,575 employees working with the CIA. And of course, CIA is one of the most famous foreign intelligence agencies in the world. They're referenced all the time in movies, TV shows, as well as in articles on the internet. And the CIA is tasked for operating, gathering, and analyzing security information across the globe. It was created in 1947 as a result of the Pearl Harbor attacks at the end of World War II. Now, over the years, the agency had received a lot of negative attention for gathering intel through human intelligence, example via interpersonal contact, often without compliance or consent. Then the CIA increased massively in size after the 9/11 attacks, and it regained a lot of its prestige after the mission that ended the life of Osama bin Laden.